Picture this. A major funding gap suddenly opens up right before a crucial land payment is due, or maybe a massive safety issue pops up out of nowhere. Welcome, everyone. If you're building a regenerative, land-based intentional community, you already know the immense care that goes into designing your life together. But today, in this explainer, we're zeroing in on a hidden structural danger that threatens all of that hard work. Okay, let's dive into this. So that real, urgent crisis hits, right? Suddenly, everybody is panicking, tensions are running high, and the general consensus is simply, look, there is no time to run this through our usual sociocracy circles. We can't wait for the next full consensus meeting. We just need speed. So someone, usually a person who already holds a lot of informal authority, steps up and just makes a decision to save the day. And honestly, in that exact moment, it was probably the absolute right call. You survived the crisis. But here is where the danger actually kicks in. Weeks pass, maybe months. The dust completely settles, but those normal rules, they never quite come back. The emergency decision just kind of sticks around. And when newer members come in and ask, hey, why is this process suddenly being done differently? Or why does that one person have total say over this specific budget? The response is always the exact same. Well, we just didn't have time to do it properly during the crisis. And suddenly, that one little justification begins to explain a whole lot of how your community actually operates. Sound familiar? I'm going to pause for just a second here. Seriously, look inward at your own community's history. Think about it. How many of your current standing rules, or norms, were actually born out of a fleeting moment of panic? It's a pretty sobering realization, isn't it? Section 1. Naming the threat. The Emergency Rule Bypass Precedent. So the crucial point is this specific structural failure. It's called the Emergency Rule Bypass Precedent. This happens when a temporary crisis exception quietly, and I mean silently, becomes the permanent rule. The telltale sign here isn't that an emergency power was used in the first place. That's normal. It's that the exception had absolutely no sunset clause. The sheer urgency of that one moment permanently altered the structure of your community, and it did so without any formal review, versioning, or genuine community consent once the dust actually settled. Section 2. The root cause. Contextualizing with RCOS core. To understand why this happens, let's look at the Regenerative Community Operating System, or RCOS. On the left, we've got an implicit structure. This is where a lot of intentional communities live, right? Relying heavily on informal power, good vibes, and assumed shared values. But in an implicit structure, urgency easily overrides formal rules because nothing is bounding that power. Now on the right, we have a governed system. The RCOS framework insists that to survive, a community must be a governed system where power is explicit, predefined, and strictly bounded. Crises demand speed, for sure, and speed completely justifies skipping process. But if that emergency power isn't predefined and explicitly set to expire, well, each bypass sets a precedent. You end up rewriting your entire constitution one reasonable seeming shortcut at a time. I absolutely love this quote from the RCOS core documentation. It hits the nail on the head. Communities do not fail because people are flawed. They fail because systems are vague. Honestly, this should be a massive relief to hear. It means you don't have to play the blame game. You don't have to point fingers at that one founder who took charge. People act logically within the systems they are given. It's the vague, implicit systems that are failing you, not the human beings themselves. Section 3. Diagnosing the community. Signs of rule bypass. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is checking our own symptoms. Let's run through a quick mental checklist. 1. Did you suspend a normal process just for now during a rough patch, only to realize it literally never resumed? 2. Did an urgent, on-the-fly decision quietly solidify into a permanent piece of community structure? 3. Is it completely unclear when the scope of a current emergency power actually ends? And 4. Is there no written log anywhere that separates your temporary exceptions from actual permanent rule changes? If you're nodding along to any of these right now, you are actively experiencing a bypass. Section 4. Structural risks and fallout. The unseen cascade. So, what does this all mean long-term? Well, without explicitly predefined safeguards, crises become the perfect cover to erode your constitution. Even entirely unintentionally, they're used to centralize power into the hands of just a few people. They suspend accountability because, let's face it, no one wants to criticize the hero who saved the day. And ultimately, they rewrite the rules of your community implicitly. Since absolutely nothing forces a formal review after the fact, the system never fully recovers. Those constitutional invariants you all agreed upon when you first moved onto the land, they get completely bypassed.
Let's look at a highly specific, very common fallout of this: the founder informal veto. Basically, whoever wields emergency power informally tends to entrench it. It almost always starts with a well-meaning founder, someone who genuinely cares, so they step in to fix a crisis. But because that power is never sunset, that founder slowly, silently becomes the informal veto point for all future decisions. The community's governance just ossifies, and your shared power quietly vanishes into thin air.
And the stakes get even higher, literally, when we talk about shared resources. Consider the devastating risk of commons privatization. The RCO stress tests highlight that an urgent financial crisis is the absolute classic cover for a rushed, irreversible land sale. Someone insists, "We don't have time to consult the whole group, the bank is calling." And suddenly, a piece of your shared regenerative commons is permanently sold off to a private party. This is a catastrophic, irreversible structural failure, and it's born directly out of an ungoverned emergency bypass.
Section 5. The Community Maturity Scale. Finding your wrong. And this brilliantly illustrates how we actually fix it. The goal here isn't to achieve absolute perfection overnight, so don't stress. It's just about taking the next step up. At level 0, it's completely implicit. Crisis suspend rules ad hoc, and exceptions become permanent silently. Honestly, most communities start right here. At level 1, it's named. You know you have a problem, you know you overuse the emergency excuse, but you just haven't fixed it yet. Level 2 is where things start getting healthy. Powers are explicitly documented, scoped, logged, and most importantly, they have a hard sunset date. And finally, level 3 is enforced and rehearsed. This means the community has actually survived a crisis and demonstrably returned to its normal rules afterward. Find your wrong. If you're at level 0, just aim for level 1 today.
Section 6. Reclaiming your constitution. Practical steps forward.
Let's move to and see how this builds into a concrete action plan. Step 1, audit your standing exceptions. Literally sit down and make a list of every single emergency measure that is still in effect today. Get it all out in the open. Step 2, sunset or ratify each one. Force a decision. Either let the exception expire right now or run it through your normal, formal governance process to make it a real, versioned change. Step 3, predefine your emergency powers right now. Before the next crisis hits, establish a bounded, logged path with a mandatory sunset clause. No more blank checks. And Step 4, watch the cascade. Keep a vigilant eye on how normalized bypasses try to creep back in, because as we've seen, that is exactly how founders entrench themselves and shared land gets sold off. I want to leave you with this final thought to really ponder with your fellow community members. When the next major crisis inevitably hits your project, and trust me, it will your community's constitution actually survive it intact, or will you allow the exception to quietly, permanently become the rule? The choice is entirely yours, but the time to decide your emergency protocols is right now, while the skies are still clear. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and good luck building those incredibly resilient systems.